In this video, we continue with the series, How to Build Your Own Dungeons & Dragons Campaign. Hello, and welcome to Attacks of Opportunity. I'm your host, John Sprunk. This is the second video in our series, How to Build a D&D Campaign. Thank you for watching, and please hit the subscribe button below. Last time, we discussed how to develop a concept for your campaign, pitch it to your players, and then build a party. This video, we're going to dive in for the construction of your own campaign setting. The setting is the physical location where your campaign takes place. It can be a huge, sprawling continent, or a single city, or several planes of existence. There's no real limit, small or large, just the boundaries of your own imagination. Wizards of the Coast, like TSR before them, publishes pre-made campaign settings. I played both the World of Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms extensively in the past. They're rich and colorful landscapes filled with countries and cities and important NPCs to meet, and all kinds of great hooks for your adventures. The benefit of using a pre-made setting, obviously, is most of the work has been done for you up front by somebody else. It can save you a ton of time to have those pre-made cities and boundaries and maps already ready for you. The downside is that you might feel boxed in. What if you want to run a campaign in a region that has specific characteristics, but there's no such region in that pre-made setting? You're forced to either change your campaign idea or rewrite some of the pre-made material. Either way, it's a compromise. Which is why a lot of DMs eventually create their own homebrew world setting. As a fiction writer, this comes naturally to me. I think I was about 11 or 12 the first time I made my own D&D fictional world. I took some lands from different books that I loved, like Tolkien's Middle-earth and Howard's Age of Hyboria, and I mashed them all together into a Frankenstein's monster of a world. We didn't use it much for D&D, as I recall, but I loved the process of creating it. And I can't tell you how many worlds I've created over my lifetime. A ton. If nothing else, it'll teach you a lot about the world that you're going to use. Setting is enormously important to your campaign. Is this location part of a larger realm, like a kingdom or an empire? Or is it set off in the mountains in a distant area, cut off from everything else around it? Is it a small village where the PCs will have limited access to materials and people to talk to? Or do you want to start them in a huge metropolis like Greyhawk or Waterdeep, where they have thousands of people around them at all times? If the party's starting off in a big city, they can reasonably expect to have access to a lot of people and places. Shops to buy and sell stuff, temples, government buildings, thieves' guilds, magical academies, bard colleges. If they start in a small, remote mountain village, their access to these things will be very limited, and they'll have to rely more on themselves to get by. The location also has a lot to do with the atmosphere of your campaign. Setting adventures in large cities might make the players feel safer because they're surrounded by so many people all the time. The opposite if you put stuff in deep, dark forests or forbidding swamps or out in the desert, where they're cut off from civilization. So consider what kind of region, what kind of environment will work best for the adventures you have planned. After I have my basic concept for a campaign, I start drawing maps. Even if I'm using a pre-made setting, which includes maps of its own, I still draw them. For one reason is, I can give a lot more detail making my own maps. The pre-made maps might know where the towns and countries are located in the mountain ranges, but only I know where the evil lairs and dungeons are supposed to be. The second thing is, I just love drawing maps. There's something about discovering a world by drawing it for yourself. The more I draw maps, the deeper I can make them, the more connected I am, and the better story I can tell. Since the example campaign is based in the world of Greyhawk, I've got professional maps at my disposal. Anna B. Meyer especially makes great maps of this world. They're so lush and detailed. And now, based on her maps, I've made my own roughly in a 5,000 square mile region, which is more than enough for my needs. For this campaign, I started the party in a walled stronghold on the edge of the frontier. It's on the border between the Pomarge and the Ulek states. For this town, I borrowed heavily from the module The Keep on the Borderlands by Gary Gygax. It's a walled fortress, but inside there are many shops and homes for the NPCs. It really gives the adventurers a place to rest between their adventures. They can buy stuff, sell stuff, repair their gear, and so on. There's also some important NPCs there that they can use for information sources and whatnot. I also created a bunch of VIPs for this place. These are people that PCs might run into when they want specific information or tasks done. I drew up some notes on the fort's commander, his wife, the Castilian who runs the day-to-day operations. I also included a sage who is reclusive and a little eccentric, but he might have information the party could use down the line. And then I created a tavern owner with a colorful personality. I based him on a TV show that I really love. This guy knows everything happening inside the fortress, so the PCs would come to him again and again looking to track down rumors or to find certain people. The fort is called Ogard, and it's placed on the western edge of my regional map, so that everything west of this fort is civilization, and everything to the east is wild and mysterious. What I'm doing here is I'm creating the parameters for my campaign area. At this point, I divide that large regional map into several areas. Directly east of Fort Ogard is a river valley with tall grasses, flat plains, and of course a river running through it from east to west. This will serve as the central hub of the campaign. To the north there are some rugged hills, to the south there's a deep swamp, and to the east, beyond River Valley, there is the Ghostwood Forest. Each of these areas will serve as a location for future adventures. In each area, I place one main oppositional force and one set piece. A set piece is a location where something momentous happens. In these cases, they're dungeons that the party can find and explore. The northern hills are home to a ferocious tribe of orcs, and the set piece is an old dwarf city that the orcs now inhabit. To the south, the swamp is controlled by a large clan of lizard folk, and the set piece is their lair under a big muddy hill. To the east, in the forest, is home to many aberrations and undead, and the set piece is Ghostwood Keep, an ancient fortress now controlled by evil. I was designing this campaign to be a hex crawl, at least at first. A hex crawl is an open sandbox kind of campaign where the party can travel across the map as they desire, finding points of interest along the way. So I divided the map into hexes, and each hex I made 5 miles across. You can use whatever scale you want. I decided on 5 miles because I decided that's a big enough area to have one significant encounter per hex, and also the party can probably explore about 1, maybe 2 hexes per day, which I felt was a pretty good pace. For each hex, I wrote a predetermined encounter. Now this could be anything from a monster attack to a formation of stones that has historical value, to encountering a non-hostile NPC or creature, a mini dungeon, anything you desire. The point is that each hex will have one of these pre-made encounters within it. Although D&D tends to focus on the combats, I like to sprinkle my maps with historical sites. Whether you're using a pre-made setting or a homebrew world, your world has a history. Things happened before the PCs came along. And when they find pieces of this history, it makes the world feel more authentic. So I'll litter my maps with markers from old battlefields, ruined fortifications. Maybe you can encounter some ghosts from fallen soldiers. Anything I can come up with that makes this place seem real in a fantasy sense. The object here is to fill your game world with interesting things to discover. Some could be hostile, some will be benign, others will relate to history, but what all of them do is instill a sense of authenticity in the world itself. On the topic of monster encounters, the concept of wandering monsters has been around since D&D began. At its base is the idea that as the adventurers are out in the wilderness or a dungeon, every once in a while the dungeon master will roll a die to see if they have a random encounter with something. And if they do, usually you roll on a separate table to find out what it is. It could be skeletons, kobolds, gelatinous cubes, anything, right, that pertains to that area. I hate this idea. I hardly ever use it. I want every encounter that the PCs have to be there for a purpose, to have context, to be part of my bigger story. If there's no reason for a creature to be there, then I don't want it muddying the waters of the story I'm telling. If I want to show out this valley is overrun by bullywogs, I'll have the party encounter them again and again. They could also find campsites where the bullywogs were staying, remains of their victims, and creatures they've slain. The idea is just to convey this sense that the place is overrun. But I can also toss in other things, like a war band of orcs that came down from the northern hills. Once the party encounters them and probably fights them, they'll wonder, where are they from? How did they get here? How do they play into the whole thing? It gives a sense that the world has more than one threat at a time. As for the encounters themselves, you should strive to make each one unique. Even if it's just a band of bullywogs, make them stand out. Maybe they have distinctive markings. Maybe they're led by a stronger than average warrior, or a magic user, or a shaman. Maybe one of the bands is led by the chieftain's daughter. This can lead in all kinds of situations. The party could just defeat the bullywogs, but what if they capture the chieftain's daughter? They could hold her for ransom. They could take her back to the fort to face justice. As you see, a lot can come out of these encounters, and not all of it has to be combat. In fact, it's good for your game if you have alternative options for the party to follow. People sometimes wonder, how do D&D groups become these packs of murder hobos who go around killing and robbing everyone they see? Well, when all you have is a hammer, the entire world becomes a nail. Give your parties chances to negotiate, to explore, to sneak around, to find non-combat alternatives when they can. That will make the combats they do have much more thrilling and interesting. It also makes your world seem more real. And once your party buys into that, they'll start to look for alternative options on their own. And then your game opens up into more than just a combat simulator. So as I build this campaign, the choices I make, the places, the people, the creatures in this world, they all combine to create a specific atmosphere. It should resemble a world that existed before the PCs came along and will continue existing after they retire. It's that realness that creates an unforgettable gaming experience for you and your players. In the next video, we're going to drill down to create a specific adventure set piece, the Lair of the Bullywogs, so keep your eyes on this channel. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit the subscribe button below and share this with all your friends. We really appreciate your support, and I'll see you next time here on Attacks of Opportunity.